Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Makeshift Chef. I'm Zach, of course. So, you might have gone through Thanksgiving and you've been like, we already had that classic turkey in, with some stuffing and mashed potatoes and whatever other kind of cool stuff you guys have. But, now it's a different day and you wanted a little different style. You wanted to throw a little edge on it. Something different, something exciting, something fun. So, I'm here for you. Alright, so here's the ingredients that I found that I gotta start off with. Now, of course, we like to label at least one of our leftovers, so that way, through process of elimination, we could figure out what the other three are. So, but just for you guys at home, in case you haven't figured it out, ba-da-ba-boom, we got some turkey. Ba-da-ba-boom, we've got some stuffing. Ba-da-ba-boom, we've got some cranberry sauce. And then, of course, mashed potatoes. So I was thinking of trying to do something a little different with these instead of just put them together in the usual fashion. So what I decided to do is I decided to add a little bit of boom, get some barbecue sauce in there, and then also boom, maybe a little bit of cranberry jam to add a little bit of sweetness. Because as you may know from some previous episodes, barbecue sauce does involve quite a bit of sugar. So if you add a little cranberry and a little sweetness to it, then that'll be in keeping with the barbecue flavor. And also something else that I wanted to utilize, ba-da-ba-boom, some Hawaiian Sweet Rolls. Now you guys could use any kind of bread that you want for this, whatever you got in the kitchen, but we had some Hawaiian Sweet Rolls, and I wanted to use some Hawaiian Sweet Rolls, because you're probably going to have some normal bread sandwiches with some of your leftover turkey throughout the week, and, that's great, it's fun, I'm sure you like it, but that's not what this channel's about. This channel's about making something different. Alright guys, so here's what I got figured out so far. So I'm going to get these King's Hawaiian Rolls, and I'm going to make a bunch of kind of Thanksgiving Day sliders, but to make it a little bit different than some of the normal stuff, I'm actually going to get a little bit of that barbecue sauce, going to get some of the cranberry sauce, mix it on in there to kind of create a barbecue sauce cranberry hybrid, but also make sure that it's going to be sweet enough because that might dilute a little bit, so maybe you want to add a little bit more brown sugar or add a little bit of jam or maybe any other assortments of kind of sweet stuff to kind of jazz it up a little bit. We're going to smother that on that patty, and then we're going to cook some of this turkey a little bit, preferably in the sauce, of course, and then maybe add a little bit of either mashed potatoes or a little bit of stuffing. We'll see where it goes. In the meantime, first we want to get that cooking and mix that sauce together so we have something for it to kind of marinate in. So as I mentioned, step one, we're going to mix together that barbecue sauce. So of course, pour a little bit in that pan over there, however much you think you're going to use. I'm a really big barbecue sauce fan, so I usually like a lot. And of course, it also depends on how many sliders you want to make. I'll have proportions on the screen or in the description below. Now we're going to add a little bit of that cranberry sauce. Give it a little something. This is just canned cranberry, but whatever you guys end up having. You don't want to add too much because that would make it a bit too bitter. And a little bit of jam, not too much because it is very sweet. Now when I do my cooking, I like to minimize the amount of plates and things that I have to clean. So sometimes I'll reuse the same pan and maybe just give it a wash a little bit, or if it's all going to go together, sometimes you just got to make sure, because I don't like wasting time and I don't like doing dishes. So if you could minimize that, good for you. So now you want to get a little bit of that turkey, and so you want it to be the proper size for when you put it on whatever buns you decide to utilize. I got really small ones, so you're going to want to have like kind of smaller pieces, so you might want to take apart pieces of the chicken just to make sure that it fits properly. Now this is probably best with white meat because that'll take on a lot more of the flavors that you're going to introduce, but I'm personally a dark meat fan. Oh, look at that. Does that look kind of familiar? It should. Deja vu. I just been in this place before. Higher on the street and I know it's my time to go. So once you kind of got this underway, you're going to want to make sure it gets to a lower simmer, and then you can start prepping some of the bread. So maybe you want to toast it a little bit in like the oven, or cook it a little bit on a separate pan, or whatever you want to do, so that way it's a little bit more hearty, so it could handle a little bit more of the sauce, because I like a lot of sauce. Now I'm going to get a little bit of the stuffing on there. I decided to go with a little olive oil, which I know I didn't mention earlier, but olive oil or butter, if you have any of that, it'll make it a little bit easier, so that way it doesn't get, nothing really gets too burnt on the pan, especially since I like using the same pan. But you could use whatever you have, or you don't need to use anything. If you want, you just got to watch it a little bit more carefully. All right, add a little bit of the stuffing. Now, if you want to be a little bit more extra and overly cautious, you could form all these into like little mini patties, so that way you can just stick them on your sliders, or you could just pop them on your sandwich, whatever you have going. So it's just a little bit easier for you to manage. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit more spread out, and you're going to have to like stick it on more like a paste rather than a patty. But it doesn't really matter. So then, of course, we're going to add a little bit of these mashed potatoes in there. It's going to be good for whatever kind of sandwich that you have, so it'll add a little bit of moisture in there, which I know the barbecue sauce partially does that, but you want to make sure, because sometimes depending on how they prepare the turkey, it could be a little dry. Ours is usually pretty moist, but I don't know how you guys are at home. So it's always good to be a little safe, plus the flavors really mesh well together. Now here's a little something that I personally like to do. Sometimes if you want to do keep everything and all the juices and stuff together, as you may know, I like to put a nice little lid on there so everything can kind of commingle and all the juices stay inside, and so does the flavor, and it kind of warms everything up from the bottom and a little bit on the top. So in order to do that, sometimes I'll take a plate, won't work with all kinds of plates, and make sure they don't get too hot, but sometimes I'll actually put it in there and then I leave like a fork or a utensil in it, so that way when I want to take it back out, I can just pull it back up. But that way, once you're about ready to eat, you could actually have a nice warm plate. So when you put everything on there, the plate won't take all the heat from it, and both the plate and the food will still be warm. All right, now that this has been kind of sitting for a little while, you can kind of feel the temperature a little bit of the plate. Make sure you don't get it too hot, otherwise it might crack, and you can only do it with certain kinds of plates, so just be wary, don't use it with like a plastic plate or something like that. But there we go, nice and warm. And so everything's gonna be nice and hot, because I like my eats hot and my base down low. All right, folks, the moment you've all been waiting for. There we go. See, it's got all the layers. Boom, mashed potatoes. Got the turkey, and then we got the stuffing on top. Now, as I mentioned, if you make it in the patties, it makes it a lot easier, because you see, you just boom, plop that right in there. Whereas some of these, they kind of fall apart if you don't make it too patty-y. Anyway, oh, delicious. Thank you, folks, for sticking with me for another episode of Makeshift Chefs. I hope you found something delicious or something fun and new that you'd enjoy, or maybe a new way to use an ingredient that you didn't think of before. If you liked the video, please like it. If you want to keep getting updates and want to hear about any kind of new videos that I got going on, don't forget to subscribe. But if there's some stuff that you happen to have in your kitchen that you frequently have leftovers of, or you don't really know what to do with it, or there's just always extras and you don't know, like, what could I possibly keep using all these for? Maybe leave it in the comments and maybe I'll dedicate an episode to it, or maybe I'll make something out of it in a future episode. Who knows? But until then, thanks for watching Makeshift Chefs.